When Hillary Clinton stepped onto the stage of the International Leadership Forum, the air was already heavy with anticipation. Diplomats, journalists, academics, and students from across the world had gathered in New York to witness a dialogue between Western political veterans and Africa's rising generation of leaders. The spotlight, as many knew, was firmly on Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, a young revolutionary soldier turned president whose bold words and unapologetic defense of African sovereignty had been making waves across the globe. Clinton, seasoned and sharp, carried herself with the authority of decades in politics. She had sparred with presidents, debated with senators, and confronted heads of state across the world. To many, she was expected to dominate the discussion, but no one predicted just how confrontational her words would be. At one point in the debate, Traoré passionately spoke about Africa's right to determine its own path without outside interference. Clinton leaned toward the microphone, raised her eyebrows, and with a pointed tone declared, "Captain Traoré, the truth is clear to everyone here. You're not a liberator, you're just another dictator." The room froze. The weight of the word dictator hit like a thunderclap. Cameras zoomed in on Traoré's face. Journalists scribbled furiously. Some gasped audibly. Others whispered nervously, sensing an explosion about to erupt. After all, no leader, especially one as young and unapologetic as Traoré, would let such an insult pass unanswered. For a moment, silence stretched across the hall. Every eye turned to the Burkinabe president, expecting fury, outrage, perhaps even a fiery tirade. Many imagined him pounding his fist on the table, shouting back at the former US Secretary of State, defending himself with equal venom. Yet Traoré did none of that. He sat still. His hands remained folded on the table. His gaze fixed on Clinton, not with anger, but with a calm intensity that seemed to unnerve her more than any shouted insult could have. Seconds passed like hours. The silence grew so profound that even the rustling of papers felt deafening. Finally, Traoré rose from his seat. His military uniform, simple but commanding, contrasted sharply with the polished suits around him. He did not rush. He moved with deliberate slowness, walking to the center of the stage. The hall held its breath. Clinton's confident smile faltered slightly, unsure of what was to come. When Traoré began to speak, his voice was steady, deep, and resonant. "Madam Clinton," he said, pausing between each word, "in my country, we have a saying, a tree is not judged by the noise of its leaves, but by the sweetness of its fruit. You call me a dictator. Perhaps that is the word you have chosen because it is the only language you know when Africa refuses to bow. But let me ask you, if defending my people's right to eat, to work, to live with dignity makes me a dictator, then what does it make those who impose hunger and poverty through their policies?" The audience shifted in their seats, captivated. Traoré's words cut through the room like a blade, but his tone was not bitter. It was controlled, dignified, even compassionate. He continued, "You see power as the ability to command others. But in Africa, we see power as the ability to serve. My people do not follow me because I command them with fear. They walk with me because they know I share their pain, their hunger, their hope. If you wish to call that dictatorship, then it only shows how far removed your definition of leadership has become from the hearts of the people." Instead of raising his voice, Traoré let silence punctuate his sentences. The effect was electric. Clinton's attempt to frame him had backfired. The audience, once tense, now leaned forward, captivated by every word. And then, Traoré did something no one expected. From inside his uniform pocket, he drew out a small, carefully wrapped item. He unfolded the cloth and revealed a handcrafted wooden carving, a miniature stallion, the national symbol of Burkina Faso, carved by a village artisan. He turned to Clinton and held it out with both hands. "This," he said softly, "is a gift from Burkina Faso. It is made by the hands of a farmer's son, not by a machine. It carries no weapons, no power, no command, only history, pride, and dignity. I give this to you not as an enemy, but as a reminder that true leadership is not measured by titles, or wealth, or the ability to brand others with words. It is measured by the courage to uplift the weak and respect the dignity of every nation. The hall erupted into stunned silence. No one had expected this. Instead of striking back with bitterness, Traoré had disarmed Clinton with an act of grace and generosity. The contrast was stark. One leader used labels, the other used symbols of dignity. For a long moment, Clinton remained seated, visibly uncomfortable. Finally, she stood and accepted the carving. Her expression caught between pride and unease. The cameras captured it all: the handshake, the forced smile, the standing ovation that followed not for Clinton, but for Traoré. As the applause thundered across the hall, something shifted in the atmosphere. It was not simply about Traoré humiliating a Western politician. It was about redefining strength. For decades, Africa's leaders had been lectured, scolded, and dismissed on Western stages. But here, in one of the most powerful cities in the world, a young African captain had shown that dignity could be stronger than insults, and respect more powerful than accusation. The moment did not end on that stage. Within hours, clips of the exchange went viral across social media. Millions watched as Clinton's words, "Dictator," echoed into silence, and Traoré's calm, symbolic response turned the narrative upside down. Hashtag spread like wildfire, hashtag true leadership, hashtag dignity and power, hashtag Traoré moment. On African Twitter, users celebrated him as the lion who does not roar but still commands the jungle. In Europe and America, commentators debated the meaning of leadership, some praising Traoré's composure, others criticizing Clinton's miscalculation. Editorials filled the next day's newspapers. One headline in West Africa read, "When Africa spoke with dignity, the world finally listened." A French columnist admitted grudgingly, "He played the game differently." Clinton spoke with politics. Traoré answered with humanity. Even among Clinton's supporters, there was an acknowledgement that she had underestimated her opponent. By calling him a dictator, she had hoped to frame the narrative. Instead, she had handed him the stage, and he had used it not to fight but to teach. And in doing so, he turned the insult into a lesson on leadership that resonated far beyond the walls of the forum. In Burkina Faso, the footage was broadcast in village squares and small community centers. Farmers, students, and market women watched, proudly as their young leader stood tall, against one of the most experienced politicians in the world. Many wept with pride. "He carried us all with him," one villager said. "He did not fight for himself. He defended our dignity." Back in New York, analysts struggled to categorize what had happened. Was it a victory? A humiliation? A cultural clash? But to most who saw it, it was simpler. It was a display of leadership at its purest form. Leadership not defined by domination, but by restraint. Not by anger, but by grace. As the dust settled, a student journalist who had witnessed the exchange wrote a line that went viral. Hillary Clinton called him a dictator. He responded by showing the world what a leader really looks like. And perhaps that was the true power of the moment. For once, politics was not about who shouted loudest or who won the argument. It was about who carried themselves with enough dignity to silence an entire room without raising their voice. Ibrahim Traoré had done just that. And in doing so, he had etched his name into the memory of millions as the man who answered insult with honor and turned accusation into inspiration.